It felt like any other day, but 20,000 years ago, nothing ever was. The sun slowly sets over a clearing where our ancestors might have just discovered something extraordinary. In a hollow tree, filled with fruits fermented by the action of time and weeks of intense summer heat, a golden liquid probably emanated a sweet, penetrating aroma that spread through the primitive forest. A young hunter, driven by insatiable curiosity and the thirst that plagued him after days of trekking through unknown territories, may have tasted that strange nectar gently bubbling in the hollow trunk. Minutes later, something extraordinary possibly changed in his body and mind. His muscles, tense from constant vigilance, relaxed for the first time in weeks. His natural shyness before the tribal elders disappeared like morning mist, and for the first time in his adult life, he laughed for no apparent reason, feeling a lightness he didn't know was possible. His eyes sparkled with inexplicable joy, and a warm sensation spread through his chest, as if tiny flames danced in his veins. There are archaeological and anthropological indications that not only humanity's first beverage was born, but possibly one of the most important milestones in the evolution of our species. But did our ancestors truly seek only to quench the thirst that tormented them during long hunting and gathering journeys? Or might there have been something much deeper, more primitive, more essentially human in this tireless search for substances that radically altered their perception of the hostile reality surrounding them? What exactly did Paleolithic men and women possibly drink to feel pleasure in a world where pleasure was a rare luxury, to forge lasting social bonds in small and vulnerable groups, and paradoxically, to survive in an environment where each day represented a battle against extinction? The answer, emerging from archaeological sites and modern biomolecular analyses, may surprise us far more than our contemporary imagination can grasp. The accidental discovery. When alcohol met humanity, modern archaeology reveals a fascinating truth. Fermentation was not a deliberate invention of human ingenuity. It was an accidental discovery that forever changed the course of our evolution. There is solid and growing evidence that primates consumed fermented fruits millions of years ago, even developing a biological tolerance to alcohol that may have been genetically transmitted through generations. Our direct ancestors, including Homo erectus, who roamed the African plains 1.8 million years ago, and the robust Homo neanderthalensis who dominated European forests, likely encountered this transformative natural phenomenon long before understanding the complex chemical mechanisms behind fermentation. Visualize this scene in almost cinematic detail: a deep, damp cave in what is now the region of Dordogne, France, exactly 300,000 years ago. After endless days of torrential rain that kept hominid groups trapped in their rocky shelters, ripe fruits fallen from surrounding trees possibly began a natural fermentation process in shallow puddles formed by rainwater. The sweet, slightly alcoholic aroma emanating from these impromptu pools may have attracted not only swarms of insects and small rodents, but also the curious and cautious attention of a group of hungry and thirsty hominids. The first individual brave enough to taste this mysterious liquid probably had no idea they were consuming ethanol, a molecule that would fundamentally alter their brain chemistry. They only knew, through the sensations spreading through their body, that they felt radically different from any previous experience, braver in the face of the constant dangers of primitive life, more sociable with members of their group, breaking invisible barriers that normally kept individuals distant, more essentially human, as if a secret door had opened in their consciousness. Revolutionary studies conducted by Dr. Patrick McGovern, director of the prestigious Biomolecular Archaeology Laboratory at the University of Pennsylvania and author of over 300 scientific articles on the subject, suggest that this seemingly accidental discovery may have been absolutely crucial for the complex social development of our species. As he states with conviction based on decades of research, natural alcohol likely served as a fundamental social lubricant, facilitating the formation of larger and more cooperative groups, a possibly decisive evolutionary advantage that separated our species from all other primates. Recent genetic analyses also reveal that human populations who lived in regions rich in fermentable fruits developed specific variations of the alcohol dehydrogenase enzyme, suggesting that alcohol consumption exerted real selective pressure on our evolution. Visual suggestion. Detailed infographic showing the timeline of human evolution with precise markers indicating when each species possibly first came into contact with fermented fruits, including hyper-realistic artistic reconstruction of a group of Homo erectus discovering fermented fruits, with close-ups of faces showing the first expressions of surprise and pleasure. The sophisticated liquid pharmacies of the Paleolithic. But our extraordinarily adaptable ancestors possibly did not limit themselves to accidentally discovered alcohol. Growing archaeological evidence suggests that they developed a surprisingly sophisticated knowledge of medicinal and psychoactive plants, creating true complex liquid pharmacies long before understanding the intricate chemical and pharmacological mechanisms behind their creations. Let's consider with special attention mugwort, Artemisia, an aromatic plant widely distributed across all continents during the Paleolithic period. Meticulously documented archaeological evidence found at the Qesem cave site in Israel, precisely dated to 400,000 years ago through advanced radiometric techniques, shows that organized groups of hominids possibly prepared systematic infusions of this herb, not only as a refreshing drink, but likely as highly effective preventive and curative medicine. Modern phytochemical analyses conducted in cutting-edge laboratories reveal that mugwort contains an impressive variety of bioactive compounds: thujone, a potent psychoactive compound, artemisinin, a powerful antimalarial agent, and cineol, a natural anti-inflammatory. These chemical components could alleviate chronic pain, effectively combat deadly intestinal parasites, and, in carefully calibrated doses, possibly induce altered states of consciousness that our ancestors may have interpreted as communication with the spirit world. The renowned paleoethnobotanist Dr. Avi Gopher of Tel Aviv University observes with admiration, based on years of excavations, the archaeological evidence from Qesem suggests a systematic and intentional use of medicinal plants much older and more sophisticated than our previous academic imagination could conceive. Imagine vividly a cold winter night, 25,000 years ago, in the snowy peaks of the Pyrenees, where the biting wind threatened the survival of small human groups. A respected elder, a careful guardian of ancestral knowledge accumulated through generations of experiences, possibly prepared with ritualized and precise movements, an aromatic infusion of mugwort for a young hunter severely wounded during a dangerous mammoth hunt. She probably did not know she was intuitively administering thujone, a complex psychoactive compound that modern science is still studying. She only knew through wisdom orally transmitted by her ancestors that this bitter golden-green drink possibly alleviated not only excruciating physical pain, but also, on certain special occasions, may have allowed the drinker to see beyond the veil of ordinary reality, an expression possibly echoed in later shamanic traditions spread across all continents of the world. Visual suggestion. Hyper-detailed scientific illustration of the mugwort plant with molecular close-ups of the main chemical compounds combined with a cinematic artistic reconstruction of a female Paleolithic figure carefully preparing an infusion in primitive ceramic vessels, with aromatic steam rising from the hot drink. Primitive mead. When the gods shared their drinks among all archaeologically documented Paleolithic beverages, one stands out in an absolutely spectacular way for its probable nutritional, symbolic, and spiritual importance, what we would today call primitive mead, although our ancestors certainly did not use this modern terminology to describe their divine creation. Revolutionary chemical analyses performed by Dr. Li Liu, a biochemist at Stanford University, on carefully preserved ceramic fragments found at the Kwahukiao archaeological site in China, precisely dated to 9,000 years ago, revealed microscopic but unmistakable residues of fermented honey skillfully mixed with wild rice and seasonal fruits. But there are much older archaeological and anthropological indications that strongly suggest this tradition is considerably older than these Chinese findings. Extraordinarily preserved cave paintings in the famous Cave of the Spider, Cueva de la Araña, in Spain, dated to over 15,000 years ago through carbon dating techniques, show brave human figures collecting honey from wild beehives located on dangerous cliffs, an extremely risky process that likely required not only considerable courage, but also careful planning, group coordination, and specialized techniques transmitted through generations. Why did our ancestors possibly risk their precious lives climbing deadly cliffs for honey? The scientific answer may go far beyond the simple sweet taste we appreciate today. Honey is a true concentrated caloric bomb, containing easily digestible simple sugars, beneficial enzymes, and natural antimicrobial compounds, probably perfect for hunter-gatherers who possibly spent days or weeks without adequate food during seasonal migrations or periods of scarcity. When naturally fermented through the action of wild yeasts present in the environment, this honey may have transformed into something much more powerful than a simple energy source, an absolutely transformative sensory and spiritual experience that connected human groups with cosmic forces they could not rationally explain, but probably felt deeply in their primitive souls. Visualize in detail a primitive tribal ritual charged with meaning. After a successful collective hunt that provided enough meat to feed the entire tribe for weeks, the group possibly gathered in a sacred circle around the crackling bonfire under an infinite starry sky. The respected tribal leader, dressed in the hides of hunted animals and ornaments made of bones and stones, may have ceremoniously drawn from a special bearskin pouch a golden, effervescent liquid that shimmered in the firelight. Each member of the tribe, from children to elders, probably received with reverence a carefully measured sip of the precious fermented liquid. There are anthropological indications that it was not just a nutritional drink. It possibly represented spiritual communion, celebration of abundance, ancestral connection with divine forces that governed hunting, weather, and fertility, and a sacred moment that strengthened the invisible bonds that kept the group united against a hostile world. Visual suggestion: cinematic 3D reconstruction of a primitive beehive on a rocky cliff, with a detailed sequence showing the entire dangerous process of honey collection and natural fermentation, including an animated visual chemical analysis of the complex compounds that form during alcoholic fermentation. Ancestral journeys, the sacred entheogens of the Paleolithic. What possibly most fascinates and intrigues modern researchers in the archaeological records is the growing suggestion that our ancestors may have intentionally sought not just superficial pleasure or temporary relief from the harshness of primitive life, but deep transcendental experiences that expanded the limits of their consciousness. There is increasingly convincing archaeological evidence that they developed surprisingly complex preparations using plants that we would today scientifically classify as psychoactive or entheogenic, substances that induce profound spiritual experiences. In the mountainous region that today constitutes modern Peru, meticulous excavations at the Guitarrero Cave archaeological site have revealed extraordinary evidence precisely dated to 10,000 years ago that strongly suggests the systematic use of Banisteriopsis caapi, an Amazonian vine that contains natural DMT and other powerful psychoactive alkaloids. High-precision chromatographic analyses conducted by the renowned ethnobotanist Dr. Dennis McKenna on carefully preserved ceramic flask fragments found at these remote sites still preserve microscopic chemical residues that may definitively indicate the ancestral preparation of extremely complex ritual beverages. But we possibly don't need to travel so far geographically to find evidence of this primitive pharmacological sophistication. In Paleolithic Europe, during interglacial periods when the climate was milder, psilocybe genus mushrooms probably grew abundantly in vast grasslands, especially in fresh manure from megafaunal animals such as mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, giant bison, and enormous elk that dominated the prehistoric landscape. Meticulously documented rock art from various European regions, from the caves of Lascaux in France to the rock shelters of the Iberian Peninsula, suggests representations of human figures in apparently altered states of consciousness, frequently associated with detailed and precise representations of specific mushrooms or identifiable psychoactive plants that still exist in modern flora. The respected ethnomycologist, Dr. Giorgio Samarini, author of dozens of studies on the historical use of psychoactive fungi, observes with appropriate scientific caution, European rock art strongly suggests a systematic and intentional knowledge of psychoactive fungi, although we cannot categorically state their ritual use without direct chemical evidence. Visualize a sacred nocturnal ceremony 20,000 years ago in the frozen peaks of the French Alps, where small but organized groups gathered during the new moon for special rituals. A tribal plant specialist, a respected figure who accumulated knowledge about the hidden powers of nature, possibly carefully prepared a dark infusion using mushrooms likely collected after specific purification and fasting rituals lasting for days. The resulting drink may not have been democratically distributed to all members of the tribe, only to those specially chosen individuals who possibly needed to travel between worlds to cure mysterious diseases, make crucial tribal decisions about migrations or conflicts, or communicate directly with ancestral spirits who governed the group's destiny. There are anthropological suggestions that it was simultaneously advanced medicine, primitive religion, and sophisticated spiritual technology concentrated in a dark, bitter liquid that opened doors of perception normally closed to ordinary consciousness. Visual suggestion. Interactive continental map showing the precise geographical distribution of psychoactive plants documented during the Paleolithic, combined with cinematic artistic reconstructions of possible ritual ceremonies meticulously based on documented rock art and authentic archaeological artifacts. Liquid survival, the eminently practical side of ancestral pleasure. But it would be academically naive and romantically irresponsible to idealize these ancestral practices without carefully recognizing and analyzing their probable, eminently practical and survival-oriented function. Paleolithic pleasure drinks possibly served very concrete and measurable survival purposes that may have made the difference between life and death for vulnerable human groups. First, the crucial nutritional aspect that modern science has finally begun to fully comprehend. Advanced biochemical research shows that fermented beverages can be significantly richer in essential B-complex vitamins, especially B1, thiamine, B2, riboflavin, and B12, cobalamin, than their original unprocessed plant ingredients. In a hostile Paleolithic environment where severe nutritional deficiencies could easily mean slow and agonizing death, a fermented drink prepared from wild fruits possibly effectively prevented deadly scurvy, debilitating beriberi, or other deficiency diseases that devastated primitive populations. Rigorous experimental studies conducted by Dr. Sam White, an evolutionary nutritionist at the University of Cambridge, convincingly demonstrate that fermented fruits not only preserve, but actually amplify and concentrate certain nutrients essential for survival, offering significant and measurable survival advantages for pre-agricultural populations. Second, the fundamental aspect of food preservation that may have allowed survival during long periods of scarcity. Fermented fruits probably lasted weeks or months longer than rapidly perishable fresh fruits, possibly allowing nomadic groups to carry concentrated liquid energy over enormous distances during dangerous seasonal migrations. It may have literally been the first energy supplement in human history, allowing our ancestors to survive journeys that would otherwise be impossible. Third, the preventive and curative medicinal aspect that our modern medicine has only recently begun to rediscover and scientifically validate. There are chemical indications that many specific plants used in primitive beverages possessed powerful antibacterial, effective antiparasitic, or natural anti-inflammatory properties. A carefully prepared infusion of willow bark, rich in natural precursors of modern aspirin, possibly not only alleviated debilitating chronic pain, but also actively combated bacterial infections that could easily become lethal without treatment. Imagine with cinematic clarity a determined group of Homo sapiens traversing the frozen vastness of primitive Siberia 30,000 years ago during one of history's most severe ice ages. The extreme cold was literally deadly, killing the unprepared in a matter of hours. Food was desperately scarce, hidden under meters of snow and ice. Respiratory and intestinal diseases represented a constant and deadly threat to every member of the group. A fermented drink carefully prepared from cold-resistant Arctic berries, rich in vitamin C and natural antioxidants, was possibly not just an occasional pleasure reserved for special moments. It may have been essential preventive medicine, portable concentrated energy, and crucial psychological antifreeze that kept collective morale high when physical survival seemed completely impossible and death by cold or hunger seemed inevitable. Visual suggestion. Comparative scientific infographic showing detailed nutritional values of fresh versus fermented fruits, combined with an animated human migration map indicating specific routes where fermented beverages could have been absolutely crucial for survival during glacial periods. The revolutionary social lubricant of human evolution. Possibly the most fascinating and revolutionary aspect of Paleolithic beverages is their probable transformative role in creating and strengthening complex social bonds that distinguish our species. Advanced modern neuroscience shows us with precision that alcohol specifically stimulates the release of dopamine and endorphins, the same powerful neurotransmitters involved in cooperative behaviors, formation of lasting emotional bonds, and feelings of trust and empathy that form the basis of complex human societies. Dr. Robin Dunbar, a globally respected evolutionary anthropologist from the University of Oxford and creator of the famous theory on social cognitive limits, proposes an absolutely fascinating theory with profound implications. The social consumption of alcohol may have been historically crucial for the development of significantly larger and more cooperative human groups than any other primate species managed to achieve. While our closest primate relatives, chimpanzees and bonobos, can naturally maintain stable social bonds with only 50 to 150 individuals, the famous Dunbar's number, modern humans can form and maintain functional societies with thousands, millions, or even billions of people. Alcohol and other socially active substances may have been the crucial evolutionary hack that allowed this revolutionary social expansion that defines our species. Impressive archaeological evidence from the extraordinary site of Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey, precisely dated to 11,500 years ago and considered humanity's first temple, suggests large-scale fermentation activities organized specifically for large regular community gatherings that brought together hundreds of people from different tribes, possibly empirically supporting this revolutionary theory. Visualize a tense encounter between two completely strange tribes 15,000 years ago on the vast European plains. The tension in the air was probably almost palpable. These unknown strangers could be valuable allies in a dangerous world, or deadly enemies threatening the survival of both groups. Generations of territorial conflicts created automatic suspicion and instinctive hostility. But then, at a crucial moment charged with meaning, the respected leader of one of the tribes possibly ceremoniously produced a special animal skin pouch containing a precious fermented liquid and generously offered it to the rival group in a risky but transformative gesture of trust. The ancestral ritual of drinking together, sharing the same substance that simultaneously altered everyone's consciousness, may have broken invisible psychological barriers, facilitated empathetic communication, and often possibly resulted in lasting alliances, mutually beneficial trade, or even strategic intertribal marriages that strengthened both groups. It is no mere cultural coincidence that practically all documented human civilizations independently developed elaborate traditions of drinking together as a ritualized way to seal important agreements, celebrate significant occasions, resolve conflicts, or simply strengthen essential community bonds. There are strong anthropological indications that this universal tradition has deep evolutionary roots going back tens of thousands of years. Visual suggestion. Detailed scientific neurological diagram precisely showing how alcohol affects specific brain circuits and facilitates social bonding, combined with an epic artistic reconstruction of a complex Paleolithic intertribal gathering with ceremonial elements of a shared drinking ritual, including details of clothing, ornaments, and facial expressions. The inevitably dark side of Paleolithic Coca-Cola, but our ancestral Coca-Cola possibly had its inevitably dark and destructive side that we must honestly examine. Disturbing archaeological evidence suggests that even during the remote Paleolithic period, some individuals may have developed problematic and potentially destructive relationships with consciousness-altering substances, a dark pattern that persists to this day. Meticulous and disturbing osteological analyses of human skeletons found at the famous Dolní Věstonice site in the Czech Republic, precisely dated to 26,000 years ago through multiple dating techniques, show unmistakable signs of chronic liver diseases possibly compatible with excessive and prolonged alcohol consumption. Some specific individuals present characteristic bone deformities and abnormal growth patterns that may indicate severe nutritional deficiencies, possibly caused by the systematic replacement of nutritious foods with fermented beverages. Dr. Eric Trinkhaus, a globally recognized paleoanthropologist from Washington University in St. Lewis, an author of hundreds of studies on human evolution, observes with appropriate scientific caution, while we cannot definitively prove direct causality, the documented pathological patterns strongly suggest that alcohol-related problems may be evolutionarily much older than our previous medical understanding assumed. Even more disturbing and worrying, statistical evidence of domestic violence, bloody intertribal conflicts and skeletal traumas appears to increase significantly at archaeological sites where there is a higher concentration of artifacts possibly related to the production, storage or consumption of fermented beverages. Liquid pleasure, even 20,000 years ago during the infancy of our species, may have periodically transformed into destructive addiction that threatened social cohesion and group survival. Analyses of stable isotopes in bones of individuals found at these sites also suggest that some community members may have suffered chronic malnutrition while others maintained adequate diets, possibly indicating that precious resources were diverted to alcohol production at the expense of basic nutrition. Visual suggestion. Scientific digital forensic reconstruction of Paleolithic skeletons showing specific signs of possible alcohol-related problems, combined with comparative statistical graphs of documented violence evidence at different archaeological sites correlated with fermentation artifacts. Profound lessons from the eternal ancestral thirst. When we honestly observe our extraordinarily complex modern relationships with refined alcohol, concentrated caffeine, artificially sweetened sodas, and other industrialized pleasure drinks that dominate our contemporary culture, we are possibly seeing the direct and inescapable echo of that first transformative sip taken by our brave ancestors tens of thousands of years ago in the primitive forests of Africa and Europe. The apparently universal search for substances that alter our ordinary perception, connect us socially with other human beings, and offer instant pleasure and temporary relief from the pressures of existence may not simply be a modern addiction created by industrial society. There are convincing anthropological indications that it represents a deeply ancestral evolutionary impulse coded in our DNA through millions of years of natural selection. The fundamental and crucial difference is possibly that our Paleolithic ancestors lived in a world where these powerful substances were naturally scarce, carefully ritualized through sacred traditions, and probably organically integrated into complex systems of survival, preventive medicine, and essential social cohesion. We live in a radically different world where modern Coca-Cola is literally a click away through delivery apps, possibly disconnected from meaningful rituals or larger social purposes, and frequently used individually to fill deep existential voids that our ancestors could not even imagine. Perhaps the true transformative lesson of Paleolithic Coca-Cola is not exactly about what our ancestors drank during their challenging lives, but about how they possibly drank, with genuine spiritual reverence in supportive community, always connected to larger collective purposes that transcended simple selfish individual pleasure. There are deep anthropological suggestions that they instinctively understood something fundamental that our technological civilization has possibly completely forgotten, that the most powerful and transformative substances may be precisely those that connect us deeply to each other, and not those that isolate us in individual bubbles of temporary artificial pleasure. The next time you hold any drink, be it a glass of aged red wine, a cold craft beer, or even a simple sugary soda, consciously remember, you are possibly participating in a millennia-old ritual that began when our ancestors bravely still shared the hostile world with colossal mammoths, deadly saber-toothed tigers, and gigantic cave bears. The seemingly simple sip you take may mysteriously echo through thousands of human generations, carrying deep ancestral memories of primitive campfires, sacred ceremonies, and the eternal and universal quest for social connection and spiritual transcendence. If this fascinating journey through possible Paleolithic beverages has made you deeply rethink what it truly means to seek pleasure and authentic connection in a modern world, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Because some fundamental stories deserve to be told honestly, and some eternal ancestral thirsts deserve to be understood with wisdom. The first human being who fermented a fruit possibly wasn't just creating a drink. They may have been creating a revolutionary bridge between the material and spiritual worlds, between the individual and the communal, between basic necessity and transcendent desire. We are probably still crossing that same ancestral bridge.